Most people imagine that financial freedom is a huge mansion, an expensive car, or an absurd bank balance. But what actually happens after your first taste of financial freedom is much stranger than that. Because the first thing that changes isn't your appearance. It isn't your clothes. It isn't even your routine. It's the silence inside your head. For years, your life runs on survival mode without you even realizing it. You wake up, you work, you solve problems, you pay bills, you sleep exhausted, and you repeat it all over again. It feels normal because everyone around you lives exactly the same way. But there's an invisible pressure running in the back of your mind the entire time. A constant feeling that everything could collapse if the money stops coming in. And that feeling changes completely the moment you achieve your first real financial freedom. It doesn't have to be $1 million. Sometimes it starts with your first serious emergency fund. The first few months of security. The first moment you realize that survival no longer depends desperately on your next paycheck. And that's where the first psychological shift happens. Your brain slows down. It sounds simple, but it isn't. Ancient humans lived in a constant state of alert. 60,000 years ago, running out of resources meant real death. Not enough food, not enough protection, not enough of a group around you, and you simply didn't survive. Your modern brain still carries that same ancestral wiring. The only difference is that today the predator isn't an animal in the forest. It's a debt, a late rent payment, an unexpected bill. That's why so many people feel anxious without ever quite understanding why. The human brain hates financial insecurity because it interprets scarcity as a threat to survival. And when you build your first real financial security, something invisible shifts immediately. You notice it in small moments. The phone rings and you don't panic. An unexpected problem comes up and your mind stays steady. You look at the future and, for the first time, you can see further than just the next bill. And then you start noticing something strange about the rest of the world. Most people walk around exhausted not just because they work too much, but because they're mentally trapped. Trapped waiting for the next paycheck. Trapped in the fear of losing income. Trapped in the constant need to keep running. And maybe that's the most surprising part of first achieving financial freedom. You realize money doesn't buy happiness directly. It buys mental space. It buys margin for error. It buys enough peace of mind for you to finally think clearly. Before that, almost every decision you make is made under invisible pressure. You take jobs you hate because you have to. You put up with bad environments because you have to. You buy things to relieve stress because you need some kind of emotional payoff. And then, for the first time, that need starts to fade. You no longer feel the same emotional urgency to consume. Because you start to notice something almost nobody notices early enough. A lot of purchases were never really about need. They were emotional anesthesia for an exhausting life. That completely changes your relationship with money. Before, earning more seemed to mean spending more. Now you start to see money as a tool for autonomy. It even changes how you perceive time. Before, Monday felt inevitable. Now you understand that maybe you don't have to sell every ounce of your energy just to survive forever. For the first time, work stops feeling like an automatic prison and starts feeling like a real choice. And there's a massive difference between those two things. You start to notice how much of society revolves around people trying to look free without actually being free. Finance cars, expensive clothes, expensive watches, huge apartments paid off over decades. On the surface, all of it looks like wealth, but often it's just obligation dressed up as success. And that's one of the biggest psychological shifts that comes with financial freedom. You stop admiring people who simply look rich and start admiring people who control their own time. Because time starts to feel more valuable than status. You notice it when you meet people who can actually slow down. People who can travel without rushing. People who can say no without immediate fear. People who don't panic every time the market shifts, the boss changes, or the economy turns. And then your definition of success starts to change quietly. You realize that true wealth might simply be the ability to breathe without constant anxiety. Ancient humans understood something similar, intuitively. In early tribes, whoever accumulated enough resources didn't just gain comfort, they gained the power to choose. They could avoid unnecessary risks. They could help the group. They could survive hard times. Security has always been one of the most valuable forces in human experience. And today it still is. Only the form has changed. Now, security means a financial cushion. It means time. It means emotional independence. And when you feel that for the first time, something curious happens. Your identity starts to shift slowly. You start consuming less impulsively. You start noticing how much of marketing lives off exploiting human insecurities. You notice that a lot of people buy things to look important, buy things to relieve frustration, buy things to make up for emotional exhaustion. But once your mind finally steps out of survival mode, those urges start losing their grip. And then a very strange feeling shows up. Silence. Less urgency. Less comparison. Less need to prove anything. You realize you no longer want to impress strangers the way you used to. You don't want to compete all the time. You don't want to turn every part of life into an endless financial race. And maybe that's the most invisible transformation of all. Your definition of wealth changes completely. Before, wealth felt like excess. Now wealth starts to feel like freedom of choice. Freedom to wake up without crushing anxiety. Freedom to walk away from toxic environments. Freedom to turn down bad opportunities. Freedom to slow down without guilt. And that changes your relationships too. Money always amplifies human emotions. When there's constant financial fear, relationships build up quiet tension. Small decisions turn into huge conflicts. Bills turn into arguments. The future becomes a permanent worry. But when there's at least some security, something shifts. People become less defensive, more generous, more patient, because the fear fades. And the strangest part is that almost nobody talks about this when they talk about financial freedom. Everyone talks about the car, the trip, the appearance of success. But the real transformation is emotional. It's mental. It's invisible. You feel it when you wake up on an ordinary day and realize your life isn't being pushed forward by fear anymore for the first time. And then another unexpected shift happens. You start to see time differently. Before, a year used to disappear quickly because everything was automatic repetition. Work, bills, stress, quick reward, start over. But once you have that initial financial freedom, you start to feel like you can build your life with intention. You think more about the long term, more about your health, more about real experiences, more about who you actually want to become. And that's why so many people keep chasing more money even after they already have enough comfort. A lot of them aren't actually chasing luxury. They're chasing a sense of control, a sense of security, a sense of finally being able to live without a constant fear of the future. But here's a danger almost nobody notices. After that first taste of financial freedom, a lot of people jump straight into a new, endless race. Bigger houses, bigger cars, bigger expenses, bigger obligations. And suddenly the freedom disappears all over again. Because the human mind adapts fast. The brain always tries to turn comfort into the new normal. That's why some people make a lot of money and stay emotionally trapped anyway. They raise their standard of living faster than they raise their actual freedom. And then the anxiety comes back wearing a different mask. Maybe that's why there's such an important question to ask after that first financial freedom. How much is actually enough? Because there comes a point where more money stops increasing your freedom at the same rate. And that's when life shifts again. You realize that real wealth might not be about accumulating endlessly. It might be about protecting your peace, your time, your health, your autonomy. And once that realization sets in, a lot changes quietly. You start working differently, consuming differently, traveling differently, even resting feels different. Because now your life doesn't feel like a race just trying to survive the next month. For the first time, it feels like something you can actually build with intention. And maybe that's exactly what really happens after your first taste of financial freedom. You discover that freedom doesn't feel like over-the-top luxury. It feels like calm. It feels like mental space. It feels like control over your own time. It feels like being able to say no without fear. It feels like being able to live without feeling like everything could collapse at any moment. And in the end, maybe that's the biggest irony of all. Real wealth almost never makes noise. It doesn't look like a spectacle. It doesn't look like showing off. It looks like quiet calm. It looks like a mind that's finally stepped out of survival mode. It looks like someone who finally realized that controlling your own time matters more than impressing other people. And when that happens, your whole life starts to change direction, almost without anyone on the outside even noticing. Because the biggest transformation that comes with financial freedom happens inside your head first. Only afterward does it show up in the rest of your life. So now tell me, which part of this transformation surprised you the most? And if you enjoy this kind of content about human behavior, money, and the hidden truths behind modern life, subscribe to the channel and leave a like so you don't miss the next videos.